We have a vision to be an international university of choice, anchored in Africa, dynamically shaping the future. Our mission is to inspire our community to transform and serve humanity through innovation and the collaborative pursuit of knowledge. To fully embrace the digital universe which we are beginning to inhabit, this is what we do at the University of Johannesburg. UJ, where the whole is far greater than the sum of its parts.
It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Simon Kerridge. He is the Director of Research, Policy and Support at the University of Kent in the United Kingdom. So we're really going to move to the other end of the world, from South Africa to the UK. Simon, a warm welcome and over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, the end of the world, I think is, no, the edge of the world, that sounds good. I'll see if I can share the right screen. Okay, so here am I and various connection coordinates should anyone desire to speak to me. Tiny bit of information about the University of Kent. Again, I'm not going to talk through it, but in case anybody wants to come and see us whenever we can travel again. We even have students, although not live ones at the moment. That's where I'm sitting currently in Canterbury, and if you don't know where that is, that's due north by quite a long way from Johannesburg and a little bit west. Here is me, again, coordinates, just in case. Everyone else seems to be showing dogs, so I thought I would. There's my dogs. That's me in the morning when I get up and look at myself in the mirror. For those of you who want to see me pre-COVID beard, then that's what I look like in normal life. And for those of you who can only hear my voice for whatever reason, I know this is what you think I look like. Okay. Really, this is quite a busy slide, but it's the one I'm going to kind of spend most time on and come back to. So I was asked to talk about sort of the future research landscape. As Christopher said, we're pretty sure, or almost sure, I think was his phrase, what the future might hold. We can never be certain these days. So I'm going to cover some points which have already been mentioned by some other people. Those will just be brief highlights, and then perhaps some things which haven't been mentioned so far, and hopefully these will be talking points. So kind of that's the list in front of you there. I've got a slide for each one. I know it sounds like a lot, but I'll be quick, honestly. Matthew talked about the number of authors on a paper up to 20 or so on, or even with CERN, you know, it's literally thousands of authors. About 20 years ago, there was a paper by Mark Green in Nature about the demise of the lone author. I put up here just some analyses from PLOS, well, not PLOS One, but the other PLOS journals, and you can perhaps see the timescale is 2006 to 2013, and then the scale up the side is the average number of authors per article. That in all of those subject areas, the average number of authors per article has increased from 2006 to 2013, usually by about 50% or so, and that trend doesn't look like stopping anytime soon. In terms of international collaboration, this is some data from a UK government report, but provided from Scopus, which shows the percentage of publications that were co-authored based on where the lead author is from. So again, just particular countries picked out there without any exception. You know, over the past 20-25 years or so, you can see the proportion of articles that have been co-authored internationally has increased. So again, I'm reasonably sure that one is going to continue. Open access, I'm not going to talk too much about because there's a whole separate strand on open access, but I think most people would agree that open access is on the rise, but it's also pretty complicated. I've got a graph in the bottom left-hand corner which shows the global and the UK, again it was from a UK report, proportion of articles that were at the top gold open access, so immediately available, or hybrid in the sort of grey colours, and then down to subscription-only articles in the blue. And you can see that over time the proportion of articles that are available open access is increasing, but we're not there yet. Again, Matthew talked about open data, and there are other forms of openness, open peer review, perhaps things like archive, so pre-publication, and then sort of open research more generally. Again, I thought I'd put in a dog slide. This is not so much open access, but open for a tummy rubbing, because you do need a little bit of puppy therapy these days, I think. In the top right-hand corner, I've just listed some mainly UK-based support services for open access at the different parts of the process. And you can see there are a lot of things mentioned there, and they're not all tied together very well. So what we have is quite a complicated picture, and that's just for journal open access. As I say, if you're talking about books, open data, it gets even more complicated. Global challenges have been mentioned quite rightly quite a lot. So again, I'm not going to cover this slide too much, other than to say that there are a number of funding initiatives which people might be interested in. The UK has its own, the Global Challenges Research Fund, and the link is there should anyone wish to avail themselves of that. As you can see, well, a collection of people that we had, we hosted some sort of sandpit working in 2019. Unfortunately, we weren't able to run it this year, of course. I haven't heard too much, but I did have to sneak out for an hour, so sorry about that, about the sort of the north-southness of things, if you like, and decolonization of research, and thinking about how things are going to change in terms of the South taking a lead. There's been a lot of talk in recent years about SouthSouth Research. Of course, from my point of view, I'm interested in the North being involved. So that South-driven, South-North research, I think, is going to be something that we'll see a lot more of in the future. This is a bit of a whistle-stop tour, so I'm hoping that if anyone has a question, they will type it in as we go. And if not, your memory might be better than mine, and you can ask it at the end. Impact. Now here I'm talking about research impact, not at all related to impact factors, not one of my favourite things. For those of you familiar with the UK, every 6 years or so we have a research assessment exercise. Part of that is what is the impact of your research been, i.e. what has the effect of your research in the real world been, who's taking it up, what have they done with it. Down the left-hand side, we have 36 units of assessment, and the sort of the pinkish ones, subject areas. The pinkish ones are sort of medical sciences, the bluish ones are natural sciences, the purplish ones are social sciences, and then arts and humanities in green. At the top, you probably can't read, but if you get the slides later on, there are 30 or so different different areas in which impact has happened. So for example, in surgery, in pharmaceuticals, or in mobile technologies, or in machine learning, or in law and justice, or in education, or in crime and justice, or in music, or in religion, and so on. And you can see what this chart shows is that the original research can have produced impact in just about any area of society. So the importance here is not dealing with research in small silos, but their larger collaborations. I guess I'd push that one stage further and say that what I think we'll be seeing more of is co-design in research. So this is where users are involved, not at the end with, here's a piece of research that's been done, what can we do with this, but, well, actually what research should be being done. And in fact, even earlier than that, how do we design that piece of research so that it's going to be of most use for us, the end users? How is it going to be most beneficial, most easy to take up? Ethics and governance and due diligence and all of these sorts of issues to do with making sure that research is properly run are becoming more and more important. I haven't put a slide in, but probably most people have heard about the research in psychology where only about 15% of articles which were looked at, could that research be reproduced because the underlying data wasn't there. So again, it's, well, what is the value for that if you can't redo that piece of research? So again, that sort of ethics and governance required in order to make sure that research is done in an ethical way, is appropriately governed, but then leads on to research which can be repeatable. I'll put in a quick link here on the due diligence side of things, particularly with a lot of colleagues from the South. We're talking about this GCRF funding that I was talking about for the UK and for most other countries. When you're dealing with a partner in the UK or elsewhere, then you have to convince yourself that you have sufficient information about that partner in order that you can trust that they will do the research and so on. So we have to do this due diligence process before we can pass the monies over, and it's the same with monies coming the other way as well. So there's a UK initiative at the moment to try and streamline that process and make it more efficient, because it's pretty horrific at the moment. Moving on to the bottom half of the slide there, we have this Responsible Research and Innovation, RRI, or Responsible Conduct and Research, RCR, which is kind of the American equivalent acronym. And it's really talking about a spectrum of behaviours for researchers. So the worst behaviour is research misconduct. The best behaviour is doing everything absolutely properly. But of course, there's a grey lines in between, and so they have this concept of questionable research practice. You probably can't see the table in the bottom right-hand corner properly, but basically what they did was a piece of research. They asked about 3,500 researchers of all levels. Had they themselves engaged in any of these sorts of activities in the last 3 years? And you can see the percentages there of 0.3% for things like falsifying research data, but even 0.3% out of 3,000 is not an insignificant number of researchers. But when you're looking down at the bottom in terms of other behaviours, so things like inappropriately assigning authorship credit, which runs at about 10%, so 1 in 10 academic staff will have done something inappropriate in terms of authorship, maybe adding an author that perhaps shouldn't have been there, the head of lab who didn't do anything, or excluding an author who perhaps should have been on. So again, you know, that 10% is quite a worrying thing to me. So I think there'll be a lot of work in the coming years about tightening up these research practices. And there we go. I also see a rise coming in citizen science. If it's not an area that you're familiar with, sure probably everyone is, and there's a really great US website on there which contains a lot of information about good practice, about how to go about that and so on. And again, I can potentially see a role for the library as a hub for supporting citizen science. Again, Matthew talked about metrics. I'm not a huge fan of using metrics because I think we often give them more credence than they should. There's that famous phrase about you should measure things which you want to measure rather than just the things that you can measure. If anyone hasn't seen the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment, then I would take a look at that. Also the Leiden Manifesto, please take a look at that. If you want to read about 500 pages worth of information about metrics and why they are and aren't good, then the Metric Tide is the report for you. I leave you with this question here: is 12 bigger than 10? Well, 12 is bigger than 10, but if it's 12 plus or minus 2 and 10 plus or minus 2, then 12 isn't necessarily bigger than 10. So we give far too much credence to false accuracy in terms of metrics. Evidence-based policy making. Wouldn't it be great if all of our respective governments made all of their decisions based on the best possible evidence available? There's a link there to a government speech from a couple of years ago about the importance of evidence-based policy, trying to avoid confirmation bias. We knew this was what we were going to say, so therefore we'll do it anyway. The optimism bias, of course we'll be able to negotiate that trade deal. It will be no problem at all. We'll have it done in 3 days. And there's also the issue of loss aversion, which is worrying about, you've already spent 2 years and $200 million on this thing, we must spend much more and get it done, as opposed to actually, do you know what, we should forget that and move on to something new. So actually looking at the evidence rather than just ploughing on regardless. I'm sure we will make more progress on evidence-based policy making as we go forward. We shall see. Extra slide on the Research Office of the Future. So unlike Christopher, I'm still at home, so I have my therapy dogs with me. My thoughts about the Research Office, and here I'm talking about the Central Research Office, which will have workings with the library, but as opposed to library research support. IT infrastructure has been a big issue for us. Of course it has. Are we going to see more virtual working? Yes, we will. At Kent, for example, we're expected, even after COVID, to be probably working 2 days at home a week because we can now, probably more flexibly. Lots of systems need to be integrated, so not so much the infrastructure, but the interrelationship between systems. Real problem with keeping that sense of team going, though. Will there be fewer meetings or more meetings? I don't know about everyone else, but I seem to be in meetings 9 to 5 every day and no time to actually do any work. I'm sure there will be less travel, more virtual conferences like this excellent conference that we're at. More collaboration, yes, I think there's going to be. Those trends I talked about aren't going to change. We just need to be clever about how we're going to do it. And of course, we have a global recession coming / here altogether already. So we'll just have to do as much as we can, as well as we can. Research managers and administrators, that RMA acronym there, our job is to support research, and we'll continue to do that as best as we possibly can. I think I'm probably about out of time, although Marie, you didn't pop up on my screen, so I'm done though.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.